Welcome to another episode of Lincoln to Local. I'm Dustin Milkey, and this week I'll be visiting with Oklahoma Farm Bureau Vice President of Public Policy, Steve Thompson, as we discuss the latest on a water bill that was vetoed by Governor Kevin Stitt, an update on poultry litter legislation that we've been following all legislative session, a list of bills that have already been signed into law in Oklahoma, and an update on the state budget process. So, Steve, we find ourselves at the beginning of May with sine die quickly approaching for the 2024 legislative session. Can you give us an update on where we are in the process of the 2024 Oklahoma legislative session and what's going to happen here in the next few weeks as we round out our session?
Yeah, we breezed into May this week, and things kind of taken a turn at the Capitol as far as the pace and the topics and the schedule. We wrapped up the last major floor work deadline, so the late nights, at least for now, are over with the legislature. But things slow as far as committee work. There's still some executive nominations and things that the committees may be called back for. But the floor days have been very short as they focus more on appropriations, negotiations, and things related to that. And most of the bills that we're going to kind of sail through each time of the first benchmark have made their completion. But everything that's left now is probably in the work in progress stage and headed to a conference committee. And so those are mainly the things that we're digging through now is what happened the first part of the session kind of smooth, and now what really needs negotiations and work. And that certainly applies to the budget process. We have a number of priorities all along that we've been trying to track, from OSU extension through some more things with the vet school and things related to agriculture and natural resources. And so that's what really comes into focus here at the beginning of May.
One issue that saw a lot of movement, and I know you guys in public policy have been working on quite a bit, end of last week, beginning of this week, is a water bill that we saw some sudden movement on and spurred Oklahoma Farm Bureau to request that Governor Stitt veto that bill. Can you give us a little bit of an update on what that bill was, how that process evolved, and how the bill ended up?
That's right. The water bill and its companion has been probably the biggest issue that's taken over this legislative session for Farm Bureau and our members, as well as our allies at the Capitol. And it's something we've discussed pretty much from the first week of session that has to do with water metering or measuring and mandatory reporting to the Water Resources Board and different types of enforcement mechanisms, and whether or not we're going to change the way that structure works in Oklahoma. And our members have had lots of opinions all around the state. We've tried to work with them to get that incorporated into the legislation, and we weren't really able to get everybody's issues taken care of with that. So that was probably something that needed to receive further attention and discussion. And it ended up working its way through the Senate in an unusual fashion and dropped down to the governor's office to be signed into law. And so our board met last week and voted to pursue a gubernatorial veto. And so we reached out and worked with the governor and his staff on that. And we're pleased to report that it's not something we often do, but the governor did approve that request, as well as several other stakeholders involved in this process joined with us in that call. But we appreciate he and his team listening to our issues, and the community really spoke loud and clear throughout the state that bill wasn't ready to be finished, and we were honestly a little frustrated with how the legislative process worked through that. But the governor did grant the veto, and so that bill is sidelined for the rest of the year. And its companion, who we had worked on quite a bit, did not get a hearing on the House side last week, so it's in effect out of commission for this session. But we really believe that this topic will continue on in the future, and that's okay. And we want to be part of that discussion, and I know that's going to be a major topic with our resolutions process throughout the summer and fall. And it's something we need to come together as a Farm Bureau family and establish some policy about what we would accept, what we wouldn't, and what it needs to look like, and continue that conversation with the legislature and other stakeholders. So it's very tough to balance all the needs, different regions of the state with that. But I'm still optimistic that in coming years, good policy can be adopted there. But it just wasn't able to come together this year, and we're thankful that the members helped us work through that process, and we're very thankful ultimately that the governor did issue a veto on that really kind of premature legislation, I guess I would say.
Another issue that seems like we've been working on since the very beginning of session this year has been one dealing with poultry litter, and we've provided a lot of updates to our members throughout the session. So where is that bill currently, as we have less than a month now to finish out the session?
Yeah, that's probably been the next biggest topic throughout the year, and I appreciate the members' input and support on that as well. And that bill did pass out of the Senate last week. However, it had to have a procedural move done that sends it back towards what we call a conference committee, and so it's probably going to have to pass both the House and Senate one more time. And we're involved in some discussions with a few legislative leaders about fine-tuning the details of that. We were very comfortable with where the language was, but there were still a few more questions that we had to resolve, and so we're working honestly to correct what we feel like is some misinformation that had circulated around amongst some groups who had opposed that bill that we didn't feel are very agriculture friendly or even really very, very agriculturally understanding of what happens on our farms and ranches. And so we're continuing to work with the legislature on that, and we're hopeful that in a week to 10 days we may be able to get that back onto starting in the House floor and then work its way to the Senate and possibly vice versa. But that's one of the things that working through the communications team that you guys have as well as the field reps, we will probably be reaching out to the members again to kind of update them about that, because that's really made a big difference in how that has been able to continue to move along through the session, because we've had a lot of grassroots membership support for protecting farmers and ranchers and that are following all the rules and laws of the state. And we want to continue to promote those ideas at the legislature.
Now, while we've been watching water bills and poultry legislation all session long, and that's consumed a lot of time and effort, I know there's a lot of other bills every session, and I know we've seen Governor Stitt sign a few bills that Farm Bureau has been tracking and thinking about into law. And so can you give us an update on some of those bills that we've seen signed that have worked their way through the entire legislative process?
Yeah, kind of buried amongst the bigger fights that have required lots of time and effort have been a handful of things that kind of quietly worked their way through the process, but we're very excited about. One of them has been a priority of ours for a number of years, having to do with large animal veterinarians and an incentive program that has been on the books that would benefit large animal students enrolled at the OSU College of Veterinary Medicine with a part of a grant and loan repayment program. And that was kind of updated and modernized, and the amount of that was increased from $20,000 a year up to $25,000, and the limit on a number of students that could achieve that has been taken away. So we're optimistic that that's headed in the right direction. Now, the big key is we have to get the funding that goes along with it, because that program was started in around 2008, but only received the state funding to make it functional one time since then. So that's one of those things in the budget process that we're still trying to keep on everybody's radar. But we feel like this step forward to increasing the amount and the number of students that could achieve that is heading the right direction. There was a bill that would allow the Department of Agriculture and their wildland forest fire employees to aid our producers in prescribed burns on their property to kind of reduce the fuel load and reduce the risk to everybody out there if during good times we can do some strategic burns around. And a lot of our producers are interested in that, but sometimes they need a little help in the control lines and the planning of that. And this was removed kind of a liability barrier for the state in being involved in some preparation work that goes into those very responsible land stewardship matters. And then the third one that we were excited to see had to do with eminent domain, which is always a big topic amongst our members and a big concern. But one of the things that we thought should have always been in the law is that if the state does end up taking your property for a project and the project does not come off, then you as the landowner who had that land taken away from you has the right of first refusal to buy that back. So we felt like it was only fair that if it was your land and it wasn't used for the purposes the court took it away for, that you had the opportunity to reacquire that land. So some common sense things in the law we feel like are stepping in the right direction.
And of course, we can't finish out an Oklahoma legislative session without budget looming very large in the discussion and in the mix. And we were talking earlier that there's been kind of some unprecedented activities regarding the appropriations process as we head into this budgeting process. So where are we at with budgeting, and what is Oklahoma Farm Bureau watching as we come into the final budgeting process for the state's next fiscal year?
That's really been all the talk of the Capitol the last few days is the typical negotiations between the House and Senate and the governor were ongoing, and and sometimes negotiating in person and sometimes negotiating through the media, but that's not unusual. However, the Senate did replace the Appropriations Budget Chairman, Senator Roger Thompson from Okmulgee. He was reassigned, and the Vice Chair, Chuck Hall from Perry, was put into the top slot. And it was very unusual at this stage in the game to see a change in the leadership of one of those committees that is very key to setting the state budget, as well as the governor has reached out and is beginning to get involved in the negotiations in a more high-profile way than what has happened in the past. And so it feels like there's still a lot of poker being played amongst the leaders at the legislature. And so we just want to make sure that some of the things, both for employees at the Department of Agriculture that we work with, to make sure that all of our paperwork is processed in a timely manner, as well as some of the negativity that we deal with about whether or not we're following the rules and laws. We want to make sure that they have a strong and adequate workforce that can explain how the majority of our producers do things the right way, as well as things with OSU Extension. That's been a priority issue of ours the last couple of years, as well as the large animal vet incentive program and some things that we've worked very well with the folks in Stillwater on. So we'll stick in there on those and try to give voice to that at the Capitol. But those negotiations are pretty hot and heavy right now, and so we're hoping in the next couple of weeks to have an update about how the outline of the state budget may work and whether or not we have additional tax cuts or other types of things that affect the state revenue. So there's still a lot of big issues on the table that affect all 77 counties, and we'll hang in there every day to see if we can't push those in the directions that our members would support.
Sounds like there's a lot of activity left, and we're looking forward to hear how it all turns out. So thanks for your time today, Steve.